Grace never imagined that her first job after getting her translator's certificate would be translating 99 love letters from her husband, Marcus, to the one he still longed for. In the screen preview, the flowery French script wound like vines, each stroke intertwined with burning love. As tears fell onto the keyboard, the words surged in her mind, like hot coals repeatedly grinding over her heart. Scarlett, I want to lift you to the moon, melt you into mountain peak snow. The first snow of Paris falling on the Champs-Élysées is the shape of my kiss. 3 years, awaiting your return, my love. Today was supposed to be her and Marcus's 3rd wedding anniversary. But now, the woman who occupied his heart was Scarlett, who had stolen her spot for an overseas exchange program back then. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. Grace hadn't yet recovered from the suffocating feeling when Chloe's video call popped up. Grace, it looks like your Mr. Marcus has finally come to his senses. Her best friend's voice was filled with triumphant cheer. I ran into him at the airport, and he even bought a small cake from your favorite place. Oh, and he's holding a bouquet of flowers. The usually aloof guy is actually quite romantic when he wants to be. Today is your 3-year anniversary, isn't it? Congratulations on seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Grace offered a bitter smile. Chloe finally sensed something was wrong and was about to press for details when she suddenly exclaimed, "Whoa." Her tone instantly exploded. "Grace, look." She lifted her phone and turned the camera. On the screen, Marcus was holding Scarlett tightly in his arms. The man who usually corrected his tie even if it was slightly crooked now allowed his custom-tailored suit to be creased by the woman's grip. Scarlett's blush was even more vibrant than the roses in his arms. They finally parted reluctantly after a full 5 minutes. Chloe, naturally hot-tempered, immediately rushed over and patted Marcus on the back. "Well, fancy meeting you here, Mr. Marcus. Hugging a thief so tightly, did you even consider how my Grace feels?" Marcus turned, his eyes sweeping over her indifferently, showing no hint of panic. He held Scarlett protectively behind him, his words full of defense. "My affairs with Grace are none of your business, you're an outsider. Scarlett will be Vance's chief designer from now on. There was no definitive conclusion about what happened back then, so don't slander people casually." "No conclusion?" Chloe scoffed, shoving her phone in front of his face. Then shouldn't Mr. Marcus keep some distance from his new employee? Otherwise, people might suspect. She glanced at Scarlett and sneered, "That Scarlett is a homewrecker." This made Marcus's face darken instantly. Passers-by gradually gathered, pointing and whispering. He pulled the teary-eyed Scarlett even closer, his parting words sounding like a heartless judgment. "Ms. Chloe will pay for today's slander." Chloe wanted to chase after him to argue, but Grace quietly called out, "Chloe, just let it go." Seeing reddened eyes on the screen, Chloe stomped her foot in frustration. "Grace, Marcus is a scoundrel. If it weren't for him proposing to you back then, that overseas exchange spot should have been yours. Didn't he say he would deal with Scarlett? Is this dealing with her?" Grace's heart twisted sharply, but she softly advised, "Chloe, I'll handle it myself. Don't worry." Chloe looked at her like that, both angry and heartbroken. "Even back in school, I always thought something was going on between them. He's always been distant since he married you, and now that Scarlett is back, you really need to keep a close eye on him." Grace murmured a soft and after repeatedly assuring her that she was fine, Chloe reluctantly hung up the phone, still worried. She sat motionless on the sofa, the L.O.V. letters spread out before her, stinging her eyes. They made her meticulously managed 3-year marriage seem like a complete joke. The reason she got her translator's certificate was because Marcus had mentioned a French designer joining the company, so she specifically spent half a year studying French, thinking she could help. But she never expected to wait for Scarlett. She curled up on the sofa, all anticipation for their anniversary gone. After graduation, Scarlett had stolen her design proposal and snatched her spot for the overseas exchange. She had wanted to argue for justice, but Marcus, her crush for many years, suddenly proposed to her. He even turned her design into a finished product, promising to help her get justice and punish Scarlett. At that time, her heart was filled with the joy of her wish coming true, and she no longer had the mind to pursue Scarlett. But who would have thought that his punishment was sending Scarlett to a top design academy, and a 3-year pact filled with 99 burning love letters? Who exactly was he punishing? At this moment, Grace finally admitted that Marcus didn't love her. That sudden proposal back then was merely a delaying tactic to stabilize her and prevent her from pursuing Scarlett. Tears welled up in her eyes when the doorbell suddenly rang. She numbly got up to open the door. It was the delivery man for custom-made furniture. Mrs. Marcus, Mr. Marcus instructed us to replace all the old furniture. She stepped aside, watching as the beige sofa she had personally chosen when they got married was carried away, replaced by Scarlett's favorite pink model. There was even a custom-made pink Steinway piano. She suddenly remembered a line from Marcus's love letters to Scarlett: "When you return, I want to put a Steinway in the living room and personally play Liebstrom for you." Her chest ached with a bitter pain. Marcus had replaced all the furniture she had chosen, and the decorative paintings on the walls were new as well. She gave a self-deprecating laugh. Perhaps what he most wanted to replace was her. When the delivery men were settling the bill before leaving, Grace handed them the black card Marcus had given her. After swiping the card, the staff member looked confused. "Mrs. Marcus, Mr. Marcus's domestic identity has been cancelled. He got a new black card with his new identity. Didn't he tell you that your supplementary card is no longer valid?" Grace felt her head spin, nearly losing her balance. Why would Marcus cancel his identity? Her intuition told her it had to be related to Scarlett. An unprecedented exhaustion swept over her. She looked at the house that had become unfamiliar and suddenly felt tired. It was too exhausting to maintain such a loveless marriage. Grace shoved the anniversary dinner ingredients she had prepared into the deliveryman's arms and, with trembling hands, sent a message to Ethan: "Ethan, I'm taking the permanent overseas translator position at Hayes." After that, she dialed another number. "Ethan, please draft a divorce agreement for me. Also, look into someone." The person on the other end was clearly at a party. After some rustling, Ethan's voice came through, very low. "Divorce? Are you really going through with it? You've done so much for him, and even now, he's still fixated on that incident of us coming out of the hotel." Grace tugged at the corners of her mouth, her smile bitter. Within his heart, Marcus wouldn't care about the baseless rumors concerning her and Ethan. Just draft the agreement. Remember our pact, that matter stays buried. Also, help me check on Marcus. She looked up at the living room, the pink sofa stinging her eyes. She closed them and said, "Check if he really cancelled his identity." The other side sighed heavily. "All right." As the call ended, Ethan's message popped up: "Okay, you'll start in half a month." After replying to the message, Grace went upstairs to pack her things. For 3 years of marriage, Marcus had given her the dignity of being Mrs. Marcus, making her almost believe this marriage could last until old age. Now she understood that it was merely compensation for deceit, stability given as charity. The pain she had managed to suppress now spread through her chest again. She shoved all the jewelry and couture gowns into a suitcase, planning to list them on a resale platform. When she came downstairs with the suitcase, the scene in the living room made her pause. Scarlett was sitting on the jarring pink sofa, one foot resting on Grace's newly bought silk slippers, holding a slice of cake. Marcus was half kneeling in front of her, head bowed, applying ointment to her scraped ankle. His gaze was focused, his voice gentle. "Don't move. Does it hurt?" A mere, light sentence, yet it made Grace's eyes well up. She quickly lowered her head, forcefully hiding the bitter emotion. Once, they too had known such peaceful times. Back then, he wasn't the celebrated heir of the Vance family, he was just an illegitimate son, scorned by others. He wore an unapproachable expression daily, yet when she was cornered by a male caregiver at the orphanage, he would fight him off with reddened eyes, pull her hand, and flee that cold place. They lived together for 3 years in the old apartment his mother left them, relying on each other. He would share a Bluetooth earphone with her, listening to heartbreaking love songs together. He would also carry her out when the lab accidentally caught fire, regardless of the risk of burning his back, when she was frozen with fear. She still remembered the kiss he left on her lips, the young man's ears burning red, his vow fervent: "Grace, let's spend our lives together like this." But after Scarlett appeared, everything changed. She wasn't content with stealing the foster family's adoption spot meant for Grace, she also set her sights on Marcus. When fought with thugs, she would always conveniently rush in like a savior, show. "Ting, stop, I'm calling the police." When teachers looked down on Marcus as an illegitimate son and disqualified him from a speech contest, she would firmly stand up: "Teacher, what you're doing isn't fair." Thus, one romantic drama-like rescue after another allowed her to gradually enter Marcus's world. Until was recognized by the Vance family, Scarlett suddenly produced photos of Grace and Ethan entering a hotel. The angle of the shots was extremely tricky, making the two appear intimately close. Marcus had scoffed then, casually tossing away the ring he had planned to use to confess to Grace, and turned to stand by Scarlett's side. Later, Grace personally saw Scarlett arm in arm with the gang leader and kindly warned Marcus to be careful, but he just sneered, "Grace, Scarlett is not like you. Don't judge her with your jealousy." With words, Scarlett became even more brazen. She used the same trick she'd employed in the orphanage. She stole the friends Grace had finally made and even took the heirloom medallion her mother had left her. Marcus dismissed it lightly, "It's just an heirloom medallion. If wants it, let her have it. Consider it payment for the 3 years I raised you." Those cold and cutting words were like dull scissors, repeatedly slicing through the dignity she desperately tried to maintain. Perhaps had long forgotten the youthful spark, yet he trapped her for 5 years with a marriage. So much so that when he proposed, she knew it was a trap but still, pathetically, said yes. "Oh, Grace is down." Scarlett's sweet voice pulled Grace from her memories. Marcus glanced at her, his voice cold. "I don't want to see you ask your friend to follow me again. Not a second time." Grace's heart clenched. He actually thought Chloe was following him. "This time it's just a small lesson. Next time, it won't be so simple." Before could react, her phone suddenly jingled incessantly. She opened her social media and instantly felt her blood rush. It was Chloe's private photos. "Oh miss, not only is your personality fiery, but your body is hot too. Dating? Thanks, sister, for the late night treat." One vulgar comment after another flooded in. Grace trembled with anger. "Marcus, Chloe was on a business trip. Running into you at the airport was just a coincidence. This has nothing to do with her. Make them delete it now." Marcus stood up and naturally sat beside Scarlett, his brow slightly furrowed. "If she wasn't following us, how would she know what happened at the airport?" Scarlett scooped a piece of cake and offered it to Marcus's mouth, her voice sweet. "Oh, Marcus, look, Grace is almost crying. She already doesn't have many friends, and Chloe is one of the few she has. How about, if she apologizes, I'll forgive Chloe?" Grace clenched her fists, her tone suddenly hardening. "Scarlett, Chloe did nothing wrong." Scarlett immediately clutched her chest, softly collapsing into Marcus's arms, her eyes red. "Marcus, is Grace still dwelling on what happened 3 years ago? But I've already been punished." Marcus allowed her to lean on him, his gaze at Grace filled with impatience. "Scarlett has been away from home for 3 years, that's punishment enough." Grace was so angered by his absurd remarks that she laughed bitterly. She struggled to suppress her surging emotions and spoke calmly, "Tell me, what do you want for you to delete the photos?" Scarlett cut in, "That depends on your sincerity, Grace. Marcus is letting me stay in the master bedroom." She deliberately pointed to the new pink bedding on the bed, a provocative smile playing on her lips, "But I'm a germaphobe. Could you please clean it for me?" Grace glanced at Marcus, his face held its usual indulgence. She curved her lips in a self-deprecating smile, picked up the cleaning tools, and went upstairs. Soon, broken piano sounds drifted from downstairs. It was Liebstrom. Grace closed her eyes, letting the melody carve at her heart like a knife. Eve. And if it tore her apart, she would personally cut Marcus out of her heart. By the time she finished cleaning and came downstairs, she saw Marcus carrying Scarlett upstairs. He seemed afraid of waking the person in his arms, deliberately lowering his voice. "Scarlett is tired. We can talk after she wakes up." Grace took a deep breath, trying to ignore the lipstick stain on his collar. "Delete the photos, or I'll call the police right now." Marcus's expression suddenly hardened, his gaze fixed on her. "You can certainly try." Grace looked at the firm ruthlessness in his eyes, her heart feeling as if a cold wind had swept through it. "Chloe said those things because of me. If there's punishment or blame, direct it at me." Marcus noticed her reddened eyes, his eyelashes trembled slightly, and his tone softened a bit. "Scarlett's reputation affects the company's interests, and we are innocent. Her heart just had surgery, she can't handle stress, so calm down. As for the photos, they'll be taken down by tomorrow morning." His voice abruptly sharpened. "But your friends have too many preconceptions about Scarlett. I don't want to hear any more slander against her." At that moment, Scarlett, who had been pretending to sleep in Marcus's arms, suddenly mumbled, "Husband, I'm so sleepy." Marcus's brow furrowed slightly. Grace's lips twisted into a sneer. "Marcus, let's get a divorce." Before could react, Scarlett abruptly broke free from his embrace, excitedly reaching out to high-five him. "How about it, Marcus? I told you that if you brought me back, Grace would definitely cause a scene with you. I won this bet, so you have to come to the class reunion with me." Marcus high-fived her and then gently brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "Okay." He had completely forgotten that today was also their 3rd wedding anniversary. Grace turned to leave, but Marcus's cold voice slammed into her from behind. Grace, as long as I don't sign, you'll always be my wife. Don't think about using some flimsy document to trick me into signing. I won't fall for it. Just be a proper Mrs. Marcus. Any more drama, and you've gone too far. Her heart felt as if it had been pricked by a fine needle, and Grace couldn't be bothered to argue. I'm not causing drama. She walked directly into the guest room. Her phone vibrated. It was a message from Chloe. Grace, I have a good figure. I don't care if people see it. Don't let yourself be bullied. Her friend's strong words made the tears in Grace's eyes finally spill, blurring the screen with streaks of water. Fortunately, she was about to leave Marcus. From now on, they would never hurt the people around her again. Half asleep, she felt the bed dip slightly, and a warm, calloused hand gently encircled her, a thumb softly wiping away the tears on her face. It must be a hallucination. The cold Marcus hadn't shared her bed in a long time. Sure enough, when she woke up the next day, she was alone in the room. A dark blue handkerchief lay quietly on the pillow, the same color as the tie Marcus often wore. Grace couldn't recall why the handkerchief was there, so she dismissed the thought. Concerned about last night's events, she quickly checked her phone. Chloe's photos were gone. When she finished getting ready and went downstairs, Marcus was coming out of the kitchen, carrying fried eggs. Scarlett saw her and enthusiastically waved. Grace, come see how beautiful Marcus's fried eggs are. But he's so clumsy, he had to fry 10 to get the shape I wanted. Grace, does he usually make you breakfast like this? Marcus, who had never cooked before, suddenly hid his scalded hand and chuckled softly. In the past, the servants handled everything, but you're such a spoiled princess. Grace isn't nearly as picky as you are. How long had it been since she last saw such a gentle Marcus? Grace lowered her eyes, fiercely pinching her palm to suppress the surging bitterness. Looking at the perfectly heart-shaped fried egg on Scarlett's plate, then at the failed, burnt-edged one in front of her, she suddenly lost her appetite. She turned to leave, but Scarlett called out to her. Grace, are you coming to the class reunion with us? Grace instinctively frowned, the refusal already on her lips, when a glint of cunning flashed in Scarlett's eyes, and she quickly added, Ethan will be there too. Grace paused. Perfect. She could get what she needed there. It was that momentary hesitation that made Marcus's face suddenly turn terrifyingly dark, his voice cold enough to form ice shards. I don't want to see you refuse Scarlett again. Then he handed Scarlett a cup of hot milk, his voice regaining its gentleness. Scarlett, haven't you always wanted to revisit the school? I'll go with you. Sure enough, it was still because of Scarlett. Grace inwardly scoffed at her own foolishness, having actually thought he was jealous because of Ethan. Just then, her phone rang. She pulled it out and saw it was Ethan. Marcus, who had just risen to go to the kitchen, glanced at it and, for some reason, sat back down. The chair leg scraped against the floor, making a harsh sound. Grace ignored it, walking upstairs as she answered the call. Hello, Ethan. Before she could finish, a whooshing sound suddenly cut through the air. A white porcelain breakfast cup narrowly grazed her cheek, shattering with a clatter at her feet. Broken glass shards cut her instep, and a trickle of crimson slowly seeped from the edge of her slipper. Grace turned back in disbelief, seeing Marcus still in the posture of having thrown the cup. He saw the blood at her feet, paused for a split second, then looked away, his words sharp as a blade. You're disrupting Scarlett's meal. So annoying. Grace slowly turned back, enduring the tearing pain that spread from the depths of her soul, and dragged her bleeding foot, step by painful step, up the stairs. Behind her, she heard their conversation. Marcus, Grace seems to be bleedin'. Gee. Ignore her. It's just a small scratch, she won't die. Tears finally fell from her eyes. She slowly brought the phone closer to her ear. Ethan's anxious voice came through. Grace, are you alright? You don't need a divorce agreement anymore. I found out. Marcus cancelled his domestic identity a year ago and married Scarlett in France with his French identity. Because his identity was cancelled, I've already applied for your divorce. You'll get your divorce certificate in 7 days. However, he has recently submitted proof to restore his identity. If you don't apply for divorce, your marriage will automatically be reinstated. Smash, her phone slipped from her hand and crashed to the floor, spiderweb cracks instantly crawling across the screen, much like her shattered heart at that moment. Grace slowly leaned against the wall and sank to the floor, all surrounding sounds seemingly vanishing. She just stared blankly, letting the overwhelming pain envelop her like a dense, airtight net, suffocating her, every breath a sharp ache. So, he cancelled his identity to openly marry Scarlett. How laughable. Just yesterday, she had been clumsily preparing their 3-year anniversary dinner in the kitchen. No wonder he replaced all the furniture she had chosen, not even sparing the decorative painting she had personally drawn on the wall. It turned out that in this house, she, Grace, was the superfluous outsider. Marcus, how could you betray me so completely? After a long while, Grace slowly stood up. The bloodstains on her instep had long dried, a dull red, much like the 8 years they had spent together, ultimately leaving only desolation. Her phone screen lit up, and she opened her social media. Marcus, who rarely updated his feed, had posted a photo dump. In the pictures, he had taken Scarlett to a street food stall near the school. The usually aloof man, who would frown if a restaurant's lighting was too bright, was now lovingly peeling crawfish for Scarlett. His face full of indulgence. His custom-tailored suit looked completely out of place against the greasy plastic tablecloths, yet it blended into the lively atmosphere of the alley because of the girl's laughter beside him. Grace's fingertips turned white. She remembered suggesting many times that she wanted to revisit the street food stall outside the school, saying the fried noodles there tasted best with double the spice. Marcus would always look up from a pile of documents, his face tired. What's so great to reminisce about? You're Mrs. Marcus now. Is going to a place like that appropriate? Now she understood. It wasn't that he didn't want to go. It was just that the person he wanted to reminisce with was never her. Grace looked down at the photos and lightly tapped like. That evening, Marcus and Scarlett still hadn't returned, but related keywords were already trending topics. Vance CEO allegedly cheating, embracing new love in car then entering hotel. Homewrecker identity revealed, woman with WZ tattoo. The pictures weren't very clear, the woman in Marcus's arms was blurry, but the WZ initial tattoo on her collarbone was exceptionally striking. Anyone with eyes could tell it was Scarlett. Grace's heart felt a slight prick, then she indifferently looked away and exited the trending topics page. Bang, the hurried sound of a door opening suddenly rang out. Before could react, Marcus grabbed her wrist tightly, with a force that felt like it would crush her bones. The pain made her cry out, Marcus, what are you doing? Let go of me. Marcus's face was cold, and he said nothing. Seeing her struggle fiercely, he bent down, scooped her up horizontally, and strode to shove her into the car waiting outside. Inside the car, he still held her tightly, as if he wanted to melt her into his flesh before letting go. Grace shut her eyes tightly, unwilling to look at this utterly unfamiliar man. Marcus, however, suddenly pinched her chin, his eyes swirling with arc emotion. Grace, do you even remember who you are? After something like this happens, would it kill you to ask a question? Are you really so indifferent? Grace stubbornly met his gaze, her lips tightly pressed, saying nothing. But she was sneering inwardly. Ask what? Ask if he went to the hotel with Scarlett? Ask if that tattoo was a testament to their love? The truth was already staring her in the face, there was nothing to ask. She had already planned to grant them their wish, what else could he be dissatisfied with? In a daze, she seemed to hear a very faint sigh escape his throat. The car soon stopped in front of a high-end tattoo parlor. Grace was dragged inside by Marcus and immediately saw Scarlett sitting in a tattoo chair, her face streaming with tears as she had the tattoo on her collarbone removed, trembling from the pain. A strong sense of unease surged in Grace's heart. She forcefully pulled away from Marcus's hand and turned to run out. But as soon as she reached the door, she was blocked by several black-suited bodyguards. Marcus's cold voice came from behind her, sending a chill down her spine. Bring her over. The bodyguards expressionlessly grabbed her arms, forced her into another tattoo chair, and fastened the restraints. She heard Marcus's instructions to the tattoo artist, same spot, same initials. Tattoo them on her. After speaking, he leaned closer, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and his voice held a strangely gentle tone. Don't be afraid, it'll be over soon. Grace glared at him fiercely. Marcus, I can step aside for her, let her be Mrs. Marcus. Let go of me. She wasn't sure what she said that enraged him, but Marcus suddenly let out a cold snort, his words like ice. You wish. He then turned to Scarlett, took out a handkerchief, and wiped the fine sweat from her forehead. Don't get any more tattoos next time. It hurts me just to watch. The moment the sharp tattoo needle pierced her skin, Grace desperately closed her eyes. Involuntary tears slid uncontrollably down her cheeks. How dared Marcus? How dared he engrave the initials symbolizing his and Scarlett's love onto her flesh? Humiliation, anger, resentment. All emotions were like countless sharp blades, slicing her heart into a bloody mess. They also completely severed her last lingering thread of connection to Marcus, ultimately leading to dead silence. The young man who had carried her out of the fire all those years ago, the young man who had said he would spend his life with her, had long since died in the passage of time. But she never expected Marcus to be even more outrageous. At the press conference, Grace was like a puppet on strings, held firmly in Marcus's embrace. Beside them, Scarlett wore a couture gown and exquisite makeup. Marcus took the microphone, his expression noble and composed. "I'd like to take this opportunity to clarify the rumors circulating online." Camera flashes suddenly lit up, dazzling their eyes. The glaring WZ tattoo on Grace's collarbone was clearly visible to the cameras. It matched the pattern in the trending photos perfectly. The rumors, without being attacked, fell apart on their own. She felt Marcus's hand slowly slide down her waist, and the next second, he held her tightly. An indescribable wave of nausea surged in her stomach. She strongly resisted the urge to push him away. "That day, my wife and I were overcome with emotion," he said, smiling lightly at the cameras. "Please don't accuse innocent people." He then turned to Scarlett, gesturing. "Also, I'd like to introduce Vance's new chief designer, Scarlett. Congratulations to Vance on gaining another powerful asset, and please, investors, rest assured, Vance is always worth investing in." Amidst thunderous applause, Marcus skillfully transformed the cheating crisis into corporate promotion, leaving no loopholes. During the QA session, a reporter handed a microphone to Grace. "Mrs. Marcus, what is the special meaning behind the tattoo initials on your collarbone? Could you share a sweet moment between you and Mr. Marcus?" Grace bit down hard on her molars, just barely preventing a sneer from escaping her lips. Marcus, however, intimately put his arm around her shoulder, and facing the cameras, he smiled dotingly. "That's our secret. As for sweet moments." He leaned down slightly, planting a soft kiss on the tattoo on Grace's neck, then looked up at the reporters, a hint of playful mockery in his eyes. "Does this count?" Grace's face instantly turned pale, a wave of involuntary revulsion made her hair stand on end. Marcus, who was he kissing? She felt countless camera flashes sting like needles, illuminating every detail of her shameful marriage, tearing away her last shred of cover. That day, the photo of Marcus leaning down to kiss his wife's tattoo dominated all entertainment headlines, with titles invariably proclaiming deep affection and devotion. Meanwhile, Grace hid in the restroom, clearly hearing the reporters outside the stall jesting. "The wife is truly a ninja turtle. Didn't you see that the person in the photo had the wrong hair length? Aren't wealthy families all like this? Look at the wife's face, white as paper, then look at that designer Ms. Fong, beaming with spring in her face. Who can't understand what's really going on?" Grace clenched her fists. It didn't matter. Soon she would leave Marcus and shed this humiliation carved into her bones. After the press conference, Marcus, determined to follow through with their display of affection, took her to a jewelry auction. If gaze lingered on a piece of jewelry for even a second, he would raise his paddle without hesitation, each bid an additional $5.2 million, until the item was secured. Prearranged media reporters immediately penned articles. Vance CEO's Grand of Love, Never I Love, but Act volumes. In the car on the way back, Marcus thoughtfully draped his suit jacket over her, his fingertips light. "Ly brushing the tattoo on her collarbone. Grace, just relax and be Mrs. Marcus. In this life, no one will ever surpass you." Grace turned her head, avoiding his touch, and said nothing, merely lowering the car window a crack, letting the cold air dissipate the suffocating perfume scent. He acted so well. Who would know that all his elaborate efforts were just to pave the way for another woman? That evening at the class reunion, Grace and Chloe sat in a corner. Seeing her friend's still vibrant face, the guilt in her heart eased a little. "Chloe, I'm so..." "Stop." Chloe put a hand over her mouth. "Don't say you're sorry. If I ever run into that despicable pair again, I'll still tear into them until they can't lift their heads." Grace sighed in relief, leaned closer to Chloe's ear, and quietly explained the reason for the divorce and her plans. Chloe was so angry she shattered the wine glass in her hand. Her gaze swept over Marcus, who was shielding Scarlett from drinks, then she hugged Grace tightly. "Congratulations, darling, you're finally escaping your misery." The two had quite a bit to drink, and Grace got up to go to the restroom. She happened to catch a server changing the hot coals for a barbecue grill. The inexperienced server didn't hold the tongs steady, and a handful of burning coals flew straight towards Grace. "Grace!" Marcus's voice was filled with an unprecedented panic, his pupils suddenly constricting as he abruptly sprang from his seat. But before he could rush over, Scarlett, who was sitting nearby, blinked her eyelashes and suddenly shoved Grace forcefully. Her push was so urgent and powerful that Grace fell backward uncontrollably, hitting the champagne tower behind her. Amidst the crisp sound of shattering glass, burning coals landed on Scarlett's calf, her skin instantly turning red, followed by several blisters. Grace fell onto the ground covered in glass shards, her arm sliced open with a long gash, blood quickly soaking half her arm. She struggled to stand up, and when she looked up, she met Ethan's gaze, who had arrived late. His eyes were filled with shock and pain, and he instinctively wanted to ask a question. Scarlett. Marcus's cold snort interrupted everything. He didn't even glance at Grace, quickly picked up the frowning, pained Scarlett, and rushed out of the banquet hall without looking back. The gazes of the surrounding classmates fell on her, with sympathy, pity, and a hint of schadenfreude. Grace looked at the fresh red on her arm, letting the sharp pain pierce her bones. Perhaps it was good, the pain would help her remember. In this life, she would never love Marcus again. Chloe rushed over, steadying her as she swayed, and cursed while leading her to the hospital. I'm telling you, Scarlett did it on purpose. Who saves someone by pushing them onto a champagne tower? What do you call that? Oh, right, a sympathy ploy. Is brain swimming in the Pacific? How can he not see she's such a manipulative woman? Grace's heart remained unusually calm. Her plane ticket was already bought, she just wanted this week to pass quickly. After receiving stitches and wound care at the hospital, she returned home alone. As she pushed open the guest room door, she saw Marcus's laptop on the desk. As she passed by, the screen suddenly lit up. It was Marcus's WeChat synchronized messages. The moment she saw the chat content, Grace felt her world spin. Chapter 22. The chat contact that popped up on the screen was Alex, Marcus's childhood friend. The family primarily operated in the pharmaceutical industry and held significant influence in Riverwood. Marcus, you really outdid yourself. The swab sample you sent has already been tested with the Hayes family, and it turns out Grace really is their daughter who went missing 25 years ago. That's Riverwood's richest family, your move was truly ruthless. Giving up Grace's chance to reunite with her family for Scarlett, I have to hand it to you. Buddy, you're a true romantic, alright. Marcus replied instantly. No third person can ever know about this. Grace being Mrs. Marcus is enough, Scarlett needs the identity of the Hayes heiress more. Besides, if Scarlett hadn't been recognized by the Hayes family wearing Grace's heirloom medallion, Grace might never have even come close to them in her life. Grace felt as if her heart had instantly frozen in an ice cellar, each beat bringing an excruciating, bone-deep pain. She suddenly recalled that the night before Scarlett returned, Marcus, who usually avoided her like the plague, had uncharacteristically drawn close to her. He kissed her fiercely and urgently, even biting her lip in the end. Afterward, he held her, apologizing repeatedly, and carefully dabbed the blood from the corner of her lips with a cotton swab soaked in antiseptic. At the time, she thought it was a fleeting moment of tenderness, and a blush-inducing, undeserved glimmer of hope ignited within her. Chapter 23. Only now did she understand that his so-called tenderness was merely to obtain her DNA test sample. Grace had originally thought that if he didn't love her, she would leave gracefully and live her own life. But at this moment, a hatred bloomed from the depths of her heart, growing like rampant vines. The chat logs continued. By the way, you previously cancelled your identity to marry Scarlett. Aren't you worried the Hayes family will find out their newly recognized daughter is married and force you to dump Grace? Marrying was because she needed a family member's signature for her heart surgery. We already have a divorce agreement. I'll restore my identity in another week. As long as Grace doesn't file a divorce application during this time, our marriage will automatically resume. Marcus, I really don't understand you. Who do you truly love? Of course, whoever I marry, that's who I love. The screen went dark. Marcus didn't know she had already submitted a divorce application. As for the family reunion, how could he possibly think that a Mrs. Marcus title, in name only, would make her willingly give up the chance to find her true family? And what right did Scarlett have to repeatedly snatch away what rightfully belonged to her? Now, she was even trying to claim her blood relatives? This time, she wouldn't just sit back and do nothing. Grace immediately used her connections to reach out to the Hayes family. Upon learning of the situation, they quickly sent someone to collect her DNA test sample, promising results within 3 days. Chapter 24. Meanwhile, Scarlett updated her social media post. The post included a blurred screen preview of a DNA test report, accompanied by crying and praying hands emojis. Who understands the feeling of redemption after finding your family after 25 years, from orphan to true heiress? I guess you could say I've climbed the social ladder. The first comment was Marcus's reply, just 2 words, congratulations. Grace stared at those 2 words, a throbbing pain spreading across her chest. If she hadn't happened to see those chat logs, she would probably have been kept in the dark her entire life, forever losing the chance to reunite with her family. The thought that her relatives, whom she had pictured countless times in her dreams, were now perhaps doting on Scarlett, made her eyes well up with tears. But then she remembered what the Hayes family had said on the phone, if is proven to be an imposter, the Hayes family will make her pay. Her mind settled a little. Scarlett loved taking things from her, didn't she? This time, she would make Scarlett regret it. For the next 2 days, Marcus didn't come home. Scarlett's social media post, however, was updated frequently, filled with candid photos of Marcus applying medicine to her, accompanied by ambiguous captions. Having you in this life is enough to overcome any hardship. Grace looked at the photos, untouched. In the afternoon, she went to the courthouse to pick up her divorce certificate, and the heavy weight on her heart finally lifted. Just as she reached her front door, before she could even enter the keypad lock code, the door opened from the inside. It was Marcus who opened the door. He visibly froze when he saw her, his gaze instinctively sweeping over her bandaged arm before landing on the divorce certificate in her hand. His pupils constricted sharply. What's that in your hand? Chapter 25. Before could speak, Scarlett quickly ran over and grabbed her arm. Grace, congratulate me quickly. I found my biological parents. Scarlett's long nails pressed right into her wound, making Grace flinch and pull her hand away sharply. Scarlett's eyes immediately reddened. Grace, are you still mad that I pushed you that day? I really didn't mean it. I was so worried you'd get burned that I couldn't control my strength. These words precisely diverted Marcus's attention from the divorce certificate in Grace's hand. Marcus frowned, looking at Grace. Grace, please take care of Scarlett for me. I need to go out for a bit and will be right back. Scarlett took Grace's hand, feigning intimacy as she explained. Grace, you don't mind, do you? I suddenly started, so I had to bother Marcus to buy some feminine products. Grace pushed her hand away, a cold edge to her voice as she curved her lips into a faint smile. Enough. There's no one else here, stop pretending. Scarlett instantly straightened her back, all traces of vulnerability vanishing from her face. A mocking smile played on her lips. It must sting, having your husband stolen by me, right? Grace dangled the divorce certificate in her hand, simply uttering 2 words, whatever. With that, she turned to go upstairs. Her detached demeanor completely enraged Scarlett. Scarlett chased after her in a few steps, her voice laced with venom. It must have hurt getting that tattoo, didn't it? You probably don't know this, but I originally said a temp Worry tattoo would be fine, but Marcus insisted on getting you a real one. Chapter 26. He said he was afraid online users would scrutinize it with a magnifying glass, revealing it was fake and affecting my participation in the design competition. Grace's heart felt crushed beneath a boulder. She dug her nails into her palms, barely managing to keep her composure. Seeing her tense profile, Scarlett finally revealed a satisfied smile, her triumphant voice echoing through the entire villa. Oh, right, I forgot to tell you, my biological parents are the Hayes family, Riverwood's richest. She took a step closer, lowering her voice. Tell me, if I told them that back in the orphanage, you always stole my food and bullied me, how do you think they'd deal with you, the wicked sister? Likely imagining the Hayes family's disgust towards Grace, Scarlett became completely exhilarated, her eyes shining frightfully. Grace, why are you so useless? When the foster family came to the orphanage to adopt, you couldn't compete with me. Then, even though Marcus met you first, I just crooked my finger, and he eagerly became my lapdog. Oh, there's something else you definitely don't know, those scandalous rumors about you and Ethan? I spread those too. Slap. A sharp slap echoed. Grace watched in disbelief as Scarlett raised her hand and viciously slapped herself across the face. Her previously vicious expression instantly dissolved into one of hurt, and she deliberately collapsed softly, landing right into the arms of the returning Marcus. Chapter 27. Grace, don't be angry, I don't blame you. Scarlett covered her face, tears streaming down. It was wrong of me to mention Ethan, I upset you. The name Ethan acted like a key, instantly flipping a switch that unleashed Marcus's latent fury. He violently flung the shopping bag in his hand at Grace, his eyes as cold as ice. He carefully picked up Scarlett, and without looking back, ordered the bodyguard, lock the 6 LLA doors and make sure Mrs. Marcus reflects properly inside. Grace went upstairs, her face devoid of emotion. She watched dispassionately as the bodyguard removed all food and water from the villa, cut off all external communication, leaving only a satellite phone and a monitor. Mrs. Marcus, Mr. Marcus said you can call him whenever you've thought things through. They reported expressionlessly, the is L520. The automatically lit up, beginning to loop photos of Scarlett and Marcus in Paris. They made heart gestures under the Eiffel, embraced in the lavender fields of Provence, and cuddled along the Seine bank watching the sunset. Grace watched in silence, the youthful image of Marcus in her heart slowly blurring, inch by inch, until it completely vanished. The first day, she neither ate nor drank. The second day, she still neither ate nor drank. On the evening of the third day, the villa's main door opened. Chapter 28. She was held by several men in black, dragged into a car, and eventually taken to a luxurious yacht by the sea. It turned out it was Scarlett's birthday, and a grand party was being held on the yacht, with dazzling fireworks illuminating half the sky. Marcus, dressed in a couture gown, stood beside Scarlett. They were laughing and talking, looking like a prince and princess from a fairy tale, perfectly matched. Grace, on the other hand, was roughly shoved by bodyguard into a room on the yacht's lower deck. The room was pitch black. By the faint moonlight filtering through the porthole, she could make out the person lying on the bed. It was Ethan. Just then, the room lights were abruptly switched on by the men in black, and the dazzling light made Grace squint. Only then did she notice that Ethan was in a very strange state. His face was flushed, and his breathing was rapid. He had clearly been drugged. Before she could react, she was roughly shoved and fell onto the bed. Click, click, the sound of camera shutters suddenly echoed in the silent room. Who was it? What were they trying to do? Chapter 29. Ethan was incoherent, curled up and burning with fever. He was clearly no help. Grace hadn't had food or water for 2 days, her body felt light and weak, and the slightest movement made her dizzy. If anything truly happened here, she dared not imagine the consequences. Her only hope at that moment was Marcus, who was on the deck. She pulled out her phone to call, only to realize it had long run out of battery and shut off. An unprecedented panic swept over her. There was no choice but to move closer to Ethan and fish out his phone from his pocket. Fortunately, it still had power. She quickly dialed Marcus's number. The receiver emitted several long busy tones, and just as she was about to despair, the call connected. Ethan, Marcus's voice came through the line, thick with the smell of alcohol and piercing coldness. Enjoy the surprise I prepared for you today. I'm telling you, Grace can only be mine. What do you even amount to? So what if she doesn't love me? In life, she's Marcus's. In death, she's a ghost of the Vance family. Marcus, clearly drunk on the other end, kept talking to himself, completely oblivious to Grace's cries for help. As for what he said, how much sincerity could there be in a drunkard's rambling? Grace was burning with anxiety. Marcus, sober up, it's, bang. A muffled thud of something heavy dropping suddenly came from the other end of the line, and Marcus's voice abruptly cut off. Chapter 30. Grace clutched the phone tightly, afraid to hang up, calling his name repeatedly, trying to rouse the drunkard. Marcus, can you hear me? I'm on a yacht. Help me. After calling for a long time, a woman's light laugh drifted in. It was Scarlett. Grace, for my future, you have to die. Grace's heart sank deeper and deeper. Only at this moment did she realize that Scarlett, in her desire to completely usurp her identity, had no intention of letting her live. Scarlett, aren't you afraid Marcus will find out about all your dirty deeds? Scarlett chuckled. I am afraid, but you're about to die. How would he ever know? In my script, it's you, Grace, who broke out of the villa to specifically rescue the drugged Ethan. What does that have to do with me? I'll take good care of Marcus from now on. Eventually, he'll be touched by me. As for you, go to hell. No sooner had she finished speaking than Marcus's voice came through. Scarlett, have you seen my phone? Who are you talking to? I don't know, she replied. I saw your phone on the ground, so I picked it up for you. Marcus's voice gradually faded, leaving only Scarlett's whisper. How could you possibly hear Grace's voice? She's still in the villa. Grace tried to call for help again, but the phone was disconnected. Bang! The room door was violently kicked open. The intruders roughly gagged her and Ethan, then dragged them out. Chapter 31. Ignoring weak struggles, they threw both of them directly into the sea. The icy seawater immediately rushed into her nasal passages, stealing all the air from her lungs. Grace closed her eyes in agony. How ridiculous. Because of his absurd jealousy, Marcus had allowed Scarlett to steal her exchange opportunity, steal her family, and now he was letting her kill her. If those drunken words were true, then his love was truly terrifying. She regretted it, regretted signing the non-disclosure agreement to help Marcus and Ethan, regretted marrying him. Fortunately, she no longer loved him. Fortunately, the Hayes family had already arrived. The moment she was rescued, Grace had Ethan sent to the hospital. She returned to the villa, placed the divorce certificate and the 99 love letters in a conspicuous spot, erased all traces of her presence, and headed straight to the airport. Inside the Hayes family's private jet, a man with handsome features placed his hand over his chest and bowed slowly to her, his voice as melodious as a chant. Julian, head of the Hayes family's covert operations, welcomes the young, home. As the private doctor stepped forward to examine her, she gazed at the sunrise emerging outside the porthole and smiled softly. Marcus, Scarlett, we'll meet again. The old Grace was dead, she would embrace a new life. Chapter 32. At this moment, Marcus was deep in slumber on the large bed of another villa. A satellite phone lay beside his pillow, and in his hand, he clutched a woman's silk slippers. If were there, she would surely recognize that all the furniture in this villa were the old models that had been replaced earlier, and even the pajamas were the ones she usually wore. A sudden phone ring pierced the silence, and Marcus abruptly woke up. He instinctively grabbed the satellite phone, forcefully suppressing the faint upturn of his lips, and put on his usual cold tone, "Grace, have you finally realized your mistake?" The receiver was utterly silent, but the phone on the bedside table continued to ring persistently. He stared at the motionless satellite phone, his brow furrowed, a look of irritation appearing on his face. Rubbing his forehead tiredly, he slowly picked up the phone. The anxious voice of a bodyguard immediately came through. "Mr. Marcus, bad news. Mrs. Marcus is gone." Marcus's sleepiness vanished instantly, and his voice sharply rose. "Impossible. The tracker I put on her shows she's still in the villa." Saying this, he stood up, dressing as he gave orders. "Never mind, I'll go check myself. Have the private doctor on standby, and pull up all the villa's surveillance footage." He hung up the phone, took a deep breath, grabbed his car keys, and rushed out, only to bump into Scarlett, who had come looking for him, at the villa's entrance. Marcus was anxious, and moved to get into his car, bypassing her. A flash of jealousy quickly crossed Scarlett's eyes, but she concealed it perfectly in an instant. Chapter 33. She waved her phone. "Marcus, are you going to look for our Grace?" Marcus paused, turning to look at her. "How did you know?" "Because I saw her." Scarlett blinked, swiping open her social media post and handing the phone to him. The photo was taken in a bar, with two blurry figures in the corner. The one in the white dress bore a striking resemblance to Grace. Marcus intended to examine it closely, but his gaze first fell on the man next to the woman. The profile, unmistakably Ethan. He clenched his fists, his face dark and menacing, the air around him seeming to freeze. Clear anger surged in his eyes, with a hint of subtle disappointment hidden deep within. Scarlett watched his transformation with satisfaction, gently tugging his sleeve. "Marcus, Grace surely didn't intentionally hide going out from you. Besides, all these years, she and Ethan never truly crossed the line." "Enough." Marcus gritted his teeth, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. When he opened his eyes again, their color had returned to calm. He dialed the bodyguard's number. "Everyone withdraw from the villa, no need to investigate further." The person on the other end was visibly stunned, stammering, "But, Marcus, I said no need to investigate. Are you deaf?" He practically roared the last sentence. He hung up and smashed the phone against the wall. The metal casing hit with a clang, deforming grotesquely, its screen cracking like a spiderweb, utterly ruined. Chapter 34. Marcus, Scarlett tentatively called to him. Marcus, however, didn't even glance at her, turning and striding back into the villa. Bang! The villa's front door slammed shut with a deafening crash, leaving Scarlett locked outside. She bit her lower lip, then revealed a smile of absolute certainty and left. Inside the villa, Marcus sat dejectedly on the beige sofa. Two empty wine bottles already sat on the dining table in front of him. The cold liquor slid down his throat, yet it couldn't extinguish the smoldering rage within him. Even so, he didn't let a single drop of wine spill onto the sofa. It was a style Grace had loved at first sight. He had to protect it carefully. Lost in thought, he suddenly let out a self-deprecating laugh. What was the point of protecting it so well? Grace didn't love him at all. He stared absently at the dark red liquid in his wine glass. This wine was one he had specially prepared for their third anniversary dinner ingredients, but what happened? She hadn't given it a second thought. Even when he deliberately changed the furniture to provoke her, even when his and Scarlett's intimate photos became trending topics, she couldn't be bothered to get angry, not even making a single call to question him. What was so great about Ethan? Why was she still pining for him after all these years? He picked up the dart from the table, his arm sharply raised, aiming for the bullseye on the wall. On the dartboard, Ethan's photo was pinned. With a whoosh, the dart lodged firmly in Ethan's forehead in the photo. Marcus let out a soft laugh. Suddenly, his backup phone rang. He swiped to answer. The voice on the other end was hesitant but urgent. "Mr. Marcus, we've thought it over, and we really need to report something to you. This morning at the villa, we discovered some unusual things." Marcus immediately straightened up. "Speak." Chapter 35. The villa's main door appears to have been deliberately damaged. Mrs. Marcus shouldn't have that much strength. And, the paused, his voice heavy. "We found that the villa's surveillance footage malfunctioned on the day Mrs. Marcus went missing, as if it had been tampered with. Also, Mrs. Marcus's phone has been unreachable." Marcus was mostly sober now, and the panic he had forcibly suppressed that morning returned with a vengeance. "Keep investigating. Dig deep and find out what happened." The other end affirmed, but then hesitated. "Mr. Marcus, there are some things in the villa that perhaps you should see for yourself." When rushed to the villa he shared with Grace, the familiar keypad lock was indeed broken, with traces of having been violently pried open along its edges. His heart sank heavily. For the 50th time, he dialed Grace's number, but the receiver still gave a cold busy signal. He swallowed the dryness in his throat and dialed Ethan's number. It was also unreachable. "Ha!" Marcus let out a bitter laugh, his face looking worse than if he were crying. Neither one was reachable. Had they decided to elope? He collapsed wearily onto the pink sofa. The color, now, felt like countless needles pricking his eyes. He suddenly remembered the original reason for changing the furniture. It was at a cocktail party half a month ago, where he had unintentionally seen Ethan politely decline a female client's overture, saying earnestly, "I have someone I like." Chapter 36. At that moment, his mind buzzed. He rushed forward a few steps, blocking the corridor. "Ethan, I don't think coveting another man's wife is anything to brag about." Ethan, however, looked at him with an almost pitying gaze, a look that infuriated Marcus so much he nearly crushed the wine glass in his hand. "Marcus, you'll regret this sooner or later." Ethan's voice was deep. "Can't you just have a good life with Grace? Believe it or not, she and I are not what you think. If you care about her, why don't you treat her better? She's a good woman, you don't know what she did for you." Marcus didn't hear the rest. His surging jealousy burned like lava, stripping him of all reason. He feared that if he listened any longer, he would smash the wine glass in Ethan's face. With nowhere to vent his pent-up frustration, and Scarlett's return to the country, he used that momentum to replace all the furniture. He just wanted to see if Grace actually cared about him. But what did she do? She didn't even remember their third anniversary dinner ingredients. She did make a scene, but it was the kind he dreaded most. She actually brought up divorce. How could that be? He was furious, absolutely forbidding her to leave. Why? Why did even Chloe get more of her attention, while he, her husband, felt like an outsider? Yet, seeing her retreat alone into the guest room, her silhouette looking so frail it pained him, his heart softened again. Chapter 37. Once she was asleep, he couldn't help but sneak in, pull her into his arms, and awkwardly wipe away the tears from her face. Who would have thought that when she woke up the next day, she didn't touch the eggs he had specially fried for her, and even answered Ethan's phone right in front of him? In that instant, all his reason collapsed. He grabbed the breakfast cup and threw it, but the moment it left his hand, he regretted it. Seeing the blood seeping from her foot, he panicked terribly, yet he could only harden his heart and speak harshly, pushing Scarlett forward as a shield. That day, when he went to the school's roadside stalls, his mind was entirely on Grace. So he deliberately posted a photo dump, wanting to see if she would get jealous, if she would come to question him. And what was the result? She merely gave a faint like. Marcus was trembling with rage. Did she really not care about him that much? Then if he had a scandal with another woman, if it became trending topics, she would surely react, wouldn't she? But she didn't. She remained as calm as stagnant water, not even a single question. Instead, it was he who, like a madman, grabbed her and asked, "Grace, do you even remember who you are? After something like this, would it kill you to ask one question? Are you that indifferent?" Why? If she didn't love him, why did she agree to marry him in the first place? She was the one who first gave him hope, then made him live every day in the agony of constant worry. That's why he tattooed WZ on her collarbone. Chapter 38. In his heart, that W had always only stood for grace. He wanted her to hurt, to remember that in this life, she could only ever be his. When he took her to the press conference, he wanted to declare in front of everyone that Grace was his, and Ethan would never be able to take her away. Later at the jewelry auction, he repeatedly bid $5.2 million, simply wanting to tell her that he loved her. But why? Why, when she encountered danger at the cocktail party and collapsed amidst the glass shards of the champagne tower, did her first glance still go to Ethan? In her eyes, what did he, Marcus, even amount to? He locked her in the villa simply to make her soften, to make her eyes see only him. But now, she had still left with Ethan. Marcus closed his eyes in pain. What would it take for Grace to look back at him, to finally love him? When he finally came to his senses, his gaze unconsciously swept over the desktop, and his eyes widened involuntarily. What was that small, red book with gold lettering? Chapter 39. He picked up the divorce certificate from the table. The words divorce left him bewildered. Flipping it open, he saw Holder, Marcus, and his heart suddenly spasmed with pain, making him stumble, nearly falling. When did this happen? He hadn't signed any documents. Unless, it was when he had cancelled his identity. How did Grace know? Why did she want a divorce? Where was she? Marcus immediately called Scarlett. Where did you get that photo? Scarlett stammered, I saw it on a social media post. I don't know the specifics, send it to me. He zoomed in on the photo, only to realize the woman wasn't Grace at all. Damn it. He punched his own leg. He had been so quick to judge, letting his preconceptions cloud his judgment and wasting precious time searching for her. Nothing else mattered now. Finding Grace was the most important thing. If anything happened to her, he dared not think further, a cold sweat already breaking out on his back. He set the divorce certificate on the table, then glanced over to a thick stack of papers beside it. Were these love letters? He frowned as he picked them up, quick. Ly flipping through. This handwriting. It was clearly the calligraphy practice sheets he'd written for Scarlett when she first arrived in Paris, claiming she wanted to practice her handwriting. Some paragraphs had been deliberately rearranged, retypeset, and scanned, so at first glance, they looked like love letters he had written to Scarlett. Why were these things here? And with the divorce certificate? Chapter 40. Could it be Grace saw them? A secret thrill of delight suddenly shot through Marcus's heart. Did she get jealous after seeing these love letters and spitefully get the divorce certificate? This meant she had feelings for him. She might love him too. His heart pounded wildly, and the immense joy made his lips curl into an uncontrolled grin, his face even slightly distorted. The assistant who came in to report the situation was startled by his appearance, speaking even more cautiously, Mr. Marcus, we found out Mrs. Marcus went to a yacht last night. Also, the recovered surveillance footage shows Mrs. Marcus hasn't eaten in 2 days, and now she's missing. We're concerned. Shut up. Marcus snapped back to reality, glaring fiercely at him. Grace won't be in danger. Pull up the yacht footage immediately. In the surveillance footage, Grace was curled up in the corner of a sofa, her eyes hollow as she stared at the monitor in front of her. The assistant lowered his head. It was Miss Scarlett. She said you told Mrs. Marcus to reflect, and sending food would defeat the purpose, so we didn't dare disobey. Marcus's heart clenched painfully. He turned to the assistant standing respectfully beside him, his voice laced with suppressed anger. Who put the monitor in Grace's room? Why didn't anyone send her food? Chapter 41. The assistant looked troubled, stammering, It was Miss Scarlett. She said the monitor was for Mrs. Marcus to pass the time. As for the food, the assistant stole a glance at Marcus's already ashen face and braced himself. To continue, Miss Scarlett said that since you wanted Mrs. Marcus to reflect, sending food at that time would make the reflection ineffective. She said, it was all Mr. Marcus's instruction, so we didn't dare disobey. Marcus took a deep breath, the rage in his chest almost bursting forth. Scarlett! How dare she? Ever since he glimpsed the possibility that Grace might love him, his mind had become clearer. If loved him, then all the things Scarlett had previously said about Grace and Ethan would likely need to be re-examined. Investigate for me, he commanded in a deep voice. Starting from her time at the orphanage, don't miss a single detail. He himself grabbed his car keys, preparing to go to the Spencer family home. He was going to find Ethan and get to the bottom of things. Just as he reached the door, Scarlett came over and grabbed his arm. Marcus, have you found Grace? Marcus subtly pulled his hand away, his tone distant. Scarlett, you've gone too far. I only asked you to help me put on a show when needed, to provoke Grace, but if you dare truly harm her," he paused, his eyes turning cold. "I won't let you off the hook." Scarlett's eyes immediately reddened. "I understand. But, I have some photos here that you might be interested in." Marcus was already suspicious of her and impatiently waved his hand. "Regarding, I'll investigate myself. But this time it really is Grace and Ethan." Scarlett bit her lip, feigning concern for him. "I just wanted to help you find Grace as soon as possible." Marcus looked at her seemingly innocent face, ultimately suppressing his doubts. After all, he had once truly considered her a friend. He decided to give her one last chance. But when the photos flashed before his eyes, Marcus's body began to tremble uncontrollably. Just then, the assistant rushed back again, his face ashen. "Mr. Marcus, something bad happened. Ethan is dead." Chapter 42. Marcus clenched his fists tightly, desperately trying to control himself, not to let his emotions overwhelm his reason. But the sight of Ethan and Grace in disheveled clothes in the photos sent his blood boiling. Taking a deep breath, he looked up, fixing his gaze on Scarlett. "Where did these photos come from?" Seeing evasive eyes, he seized her chin, his voice cold and sharp as a knife. "Scarlett, think carefully before you speak." Scarlett's eyes darted around, her heart pounding in panic. Usually, just showing him photos like these would make Marcus lose control immediately. Why was he suddenly different today? "It was an anonymous package, right at your villa's doorstep." Marcus released her, tossing the photos to his assistant. "Investigate." He turned to go to the Spencer family home, but was stopped by several men in black. They were Grandma's people. "Young, Grandma wants you to return to the family estate." At the Vance family estate, Grandma sat on a mahogany sofa, her fingertips stroking a jade bracelet. When she saw Marcus, she barely lifted an eyelid. That son, it was unclear what luck he had back then to win the power struggle, but thankfully his capabilities were indeed enough to support the Vance family. "I hear Grace is missing? And she left a divorce certificate?" Grandma's voice was imperious. "I called you here to inform you that the family has decided for you to marry Scarlett, as soon as possible, before the Hayes family holds her family recognition banquet." Chapter 43. Marcus's mind buzzed. "Why?" he asked incredulously. "Why?" Grandma scoffed softly. "To allow the Vance family to ally with the Hayes, of course. This is your responsibility as the head of the family." She paused, her tone growing colder. "Besides, it's time you produced an heir. Grace has been married into the family for 3 years without getting pregnant. She's long been unworthy of being a Vance woman." Marcus was in an unspeakable predicament, rubbing his forehead in irritation. How was he supposed to respond to that? He had always thought Grace didn't love him, not even allowing intimacy. So where could a child have come from? And the Hayes family. Grace was the true heiress of the Hayes family. Grandma actually made him marry an imposter? It was absurd. Only then did he belatedly realize how terribly wrong he had been. Lost in that romantic entanglement, he couldn't even distinguish what truly mattered. He remembered that when he first learned Grace was the Hayes family's daughter, his initial reaction wasn't happiness for her, but fear. He feared she would abandon him once she reunited with her wealthy family. So when Scarlett proposed the impersonation plan, he was swayed. Scarlett had spoken so earnestly then. "Marcus, don't worry. If I stand in for her at the family reunion, she'll feel secure staying by your side, and you'll be the only one in her heart and eyes." He actually thought it would be a win-win situation. Grace's family would find their daughter, and he wouldn't lose her. But he forgot, that was Grace's family, Grace's identity. Who was he to make decisions for her? He was selfish, like a complete jerk. "Grandma," Marcus looked up, his gaze unusually firm. "Things aren't as you think. My wife can only be Grace, and I will set everything right." With that, he ignored Grandma's angry shouts behind him, rushed out of the family estate, and headed straight for the Spencer family's home. But at the entrance of the Spencer family's home, he was stopped by a figure. It was Ethan. Marcus's heart pounded. He blurted out, "Ethan, where's Grace?" Ethan shrugged, raising an eyebrow. "Normally, shouldn't you ask, how are you still alive?" Marcus sneered, "That's quite disappointing, indeed." Ethan glanced at him, his expression pitying. "Marcus, I truly don't understand you. If you care about Grace so much, why do you keep hurting her because of Scarlett?" "I never meant to hurt her." Marcus's brow furrowed, his voice urgent. "Tell me, where is she?" Ethan sighed. "Let's find somewhere to talk." Once they reached a secluded spot, Ethan suddenly asked, "Do you know why Grace and I were seen at that hotel back then?" Marcus froze. It was a thorn in his heart. On the way back to school, he had seen photos of them entering the hotel. Jealousy had overwhelmed his reason, making him swallow his confession, and thus began 5 years of suspicion. Now that the truth was about to be revealed, he felt an inexplicable panic, a premonition that the answer would be unbearable. He steeled himself, his voice carrying a tremor so slight it was almost imperceptible. What was the reason? This matter was under a non-disclosure agreement. Not a word was supposed to be told to outsiders. Ethan paused, then looked up at him. Do you remember the circumstances when you were first brought back to the Vance family? Ethan's words were like a key, suddenly unlocking Marcus's long-buried memories. 5 years ago, he was still the illegitimate son, called a bastard to his face. His mother had been deceived by a wealthy young master, only realizing he was already married after she gave birth to him. Unable to endure the gossip and whispers, she had jumped from a rooftop when he was 16. It was also after that, he saved Grace and brought her back to that dilapidated rented room. Later, his scummy father died of illness, and his only legitimate son was discovered not to be his biological child. Only then was he, the illegitimate son, forcibly brought back to the Vance family, thrust into a dangerous battle for succession. At that time, every member of the Vance family's direct lineage was ruthlessly ambitious, and he struggled just to stay alive. The turning point came after he unexpectedly secured a major contract. He had always thought it was luck. But now, with Ethan's question, his heart suddenly pounded. Was there another hidden truth? As if answering his unspoken question, Ethan slowly began. Indeed, it was because of Grace. At that time, a high-ranking official urgently needed a kidney transplant. Marcus suddenly stood ramrod straight, his fingertips trembling uncontrollably, his eyes instantly bloodshot, and his breathing grew heavy. Ethan's voice continued. Grace was a perfect match. Her only condition was that you secure the Vance family's succession rights. The truth exploded above his head like a thunderclap. Marcus's legs gave out, and he dropped to his knees with a thud. He forced a smile that was uglier than a cry. So, you went to the hotel because she was recovering? She was trying to hide it from me. So there was nothing between you two. I've been wrong about her all this time. Ethan stood up and patted his shoulder. Marcus, I warned you many times, but you wouldn't listen. There was nothing more I could do. I'm telling you this because Grace saved my life. She loved you so hard, it was exhausting. Now that she's finally moved on, don't bring her any more trouble. The best thing you can do is investigate Scarlett properly. Don't let her play you for a fool. Ethan left a phone. This is my phone. You can listen to the last call recording. And don't ask me where Grace is. I don't know. Oh, and I'm getting married. Don't forget to contribute to the wedding fund. Marcus let out a painful roar. He hadn't heard a single word Ethan said afterward. Overwhelming regret and guilt choked him, his heart felt like it was being torn apart, and every breath burned with pain. It turned out his Grace had loved him so deeply. Trembling, he curled up on the ground, tears streaming uncontrollably down his cheeks. After an unknown amount of time, he slowly sat up, his eyes bloodshot. Numbly, he picked up the phone had left and played the recording. First came his own drunken voice. Ethan, let me tell you, Grace can only be mine. Who the hell do you think you are? Even if she doesn't love me, she can only be Marcus's wife. Marcus remembered. It was the day of Scarlett's birthday party. He had drunk too much, allowing his subordinates to interpret his intentions and ply Ethan with a lot of alcohol. Immediately after, Grace's tearful plea for help came through. Marcus, it's me. Wake up. I've been taken onto a yacht, held with Ethan. Hurry and save me. The moment he heard her voice, Marcus shot to his feet, a bone-deep longing growing wildly like weeds. He clenched his fists and slammed them against his forehead, wanting to roar in regret. How could he have drunk so much? How could he have missed her cry for help? It wasn't until Scarlett's sinister voice came through that a terrifying murderous intent instantly flared in Marcus's eyes. Grace, for my future, you have to die. In my script, you're the one who broke through the villa gates, specifically to save Ethan, who was drugged. What does that have to do with me? I'll be right by Marcus's side from now on, and sooner or later, he'll be moved by me. As for you, go to hell. Marcus's blood practically froze in his veins. He had never imagined that Scarlett, who appeared so gentle and harmless, could be so malicious. It was her. She was the one who took Grace. Scarlett must know where Grace was. No wonder she could produce those photos. It was all a setup. She wanted jealousy to consume his reason once again. He had been wrong about her all along. After getting Scarlett's location from his assistant, Marcus rushed straight to the club. But what he heard there was a truth that plunged him into unimaginable agony. Marcus entered the surveillance room with a grim expression, his eyes fixed on the footage of the private room where Scarlett was. Scarlett was currently reveling wildly at the party, clinking wine glasses and drinking heavily with a group of socialites. Ever since she began parading around under the guise of being the Hayes family's daughter, she had been showered with countless opportunities and luxury gifts that filled her penthouse apartment. These days, she was either at a party or on her way to one. The who once scorned her now fawned over her like lapdogs, elevating her to the clouds, feeding her vanity to the brim. As the saying goes, no point in success if you can't show it off, so she had specifically invited old acquaintances from the orphanage. Among them was the waiter from the class reunion who had accidentally spilled hot coals. "You're amazing, Scarlett," the waiter flattered, raising his wine glass. "My heart was in my throat when I saw those coals fall on your leg that day." Scarlett chuckled, running a fingertip over the faint scar on her calf. "You did well. It was perfect for making that wretch Grace fall into the champagne tower." Scarlett's sympathy ploy was brilliant, a woman beside her gushed. "Mr. Marcus just abandoned his wife right there and rushed out with you in his arms, not seeing anyone else." Another person excitedly chimed in, "Exactly. Scarlett spent 3 years on psychological manipulation to get Marcus in her clutches, and we were all instrumental. Back then, I was responsible for spreading rumors that he was an illegitimate son, and Tiger would specifically stop him from fighting, just waiting for Scarlett to appear like a goddess and chase us away." Marcus still believes that act to this day. But seriously, someone tutade, Marcus truly protected Grace back then. If we hadn't taken photos of her and Ethan entering the hotel, he would have confessed his feelings to Grace long ago. Scarlett snorted, "Who is Grace to think she's special? Anything she has, why shouldn't I take it? Scarlett is still the smartest. She's always been the cleverest among us since childhood, no wonder she has the richest man's blood in her veins." Scarlett stood up triumphantly, raising her wine glass, her smile wild. "To me. From now on, you will all call me Miss." "To Hayes," everyone echoed. In front of the surveillance monitor, Marcus's face was half submerged in shadow, the other half illuminated ghostly pale by the screen's light, making him look like an azure returned from hell. He clutched the investigation report his assistant handed him, his knuckles white from the force. The words on the report were like burning brands. "At the orphanage, Scarlett cut Grace's hair and stole the foster family's adoption spot, then pushed the caregiver who was kindest to Grace down the stairs. Later, during Grace's adolescence, she secretly spread her photos, causing Grace to almost be assaulted. Luckily, that time, he had arrived just in time to save Grace." The subsequent events were exactly as those despicable people in the surveillance footage had said. He couldn't bear to imagine how much pain Grace must have felt, watching him hurt her again and again because of Scarlett. This woman, to secure her false identity, actually tried to kill Grace. "Mr. Marcus, please don't get too agitated," his assistant quickly comforted him, seeing his blood-drained face. "We found an expert to restore the yacht footage. Mrs. Marcus was rescued later. She should be fine." "Rescued?" Marcus murmured, repeating the words, and a scene suddenly flashed in his mind. When he had locked Grace in the villa, she sat in a corner, her eyes hollow, devoid of any emotion. That wasn't a tantrum, it was true indifference. She left the divorce certificate not out of jealousy, but because she truly no longer loved him and intended to leave him for good. This realization was like a poisoned ice pick, stabbing violently into his heart. Marcus's throat turned sweet, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His vision blurred, and he collapsed stiffly. "Mr. Marcus!" His assistant cried out, rushing to him and frantically calling an ambulance. Meanwhile, in the private room, Scarlett, who was drinking with others, was suddenly surrounded by several men in black. "Miss Scarlett, we are from the Hayes family." Scarlett's eyes lit up. She immediately put down her wine glass. "Is it time to sign the family recognition document? WHE. And is the family recognition banquet scheduled? I'll go prepare right away." Thank you for tuning in to today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section. Feel free to share your perspectives, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.